Everybody. I'm sorry I missed the reception. I had a good reason, and I'm glad that you're all here, and I'm delighted. I hate coming late to my own party, but there we are. So good evening. I'm delighted to have you all here tonight. It's a beautiful, kind of hot summer evening, but this is an important celebration, and so welcome. I'm Vikas Saini. I'm president of the Lown Institute. Today we're going to present the 2025 Bernard Lown Award for Social Responsibility to Dr. Reshma Ramachandran. So feel free to get started with your first course. They're going to start bringing it out now, and we'll get the program underway as that happens. First, I'd like to take a moment to recognize some special guests. First on the list, we'll wait till she returns. Ta-da! Dr. Lily Cervantes, last year's winner of the Bernard Lown Award. Also, Dr. Joseph Ross, who nominated Dr. Ramachandran. And he gets a lot of merit points for that. And of course, the members of the Lown family, I think scattered in different locations. If I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to put your hand up or something so people know who you are and where you are. Great. And of course, past and current board members of the Lown Institute, they're here, almost all of them, and I'd like to acknowledge them as well. I'm not going to name them all out, but if you want to raise your hands, that would be helpful so people know. And a very big and very special thank you to the American Medical Association for being our visionary sponsor again this year. Emily Cleveland Manchanda, I just got here. There she is. Thank you, Emily, both for the sponsorship and for being here tonight. Emily has to rush off tomorrow to the annual AMA meeting in Chicago, but she made a point to be here, and we're really honored. Thank you. And of course, a big thank you to all the other sponsors. They're listed in the program. I'm not going to name them here, but we truly appreciate it. This would not have been possible this evening without them. Saturday is Bernard Lown's birthday. He would have been 104. So moments like this, I find myself thinking about his qualities, and aside from his remarkable achievements that everybody, I think, knows or should know about, there's always a moment here to reflect on those qualities. And there's so many, it's hard to name them all. Tonight I wanted to talk just about one of them, which is persistence. You could see it in everything he did. Samuel Levine was refusing to have him come to Harvard as a fellow, and Lown kept challenging cardiology dogmas and promised that he'd prove it in the lab if only Levine would take him in. And of course, Levine relented, and the rest is history. His 1962 paper on the consequences of nuclear weapons detonations was refused by the New England Journal multiple times, and he just kept at it with the editor. The reason, of course, was this is not medical. And he was a very persuasive guy, and it got published to international recognition, including in the Kennedy White House, that needed something like that in their own way of dealing with the situation. One of his greatest achievements, which I think is not properly recognized by many people, maybe most people, is that he waged a battle against the tide of technology in his clinic. He waged it constantly primarily against young trainees like me who always wanted the latest cardiology gizmo or gadget. And for instance, it took him a couple of decades to really allow nuclear stress testing in the lab. And, you know, even though it's used practically everywhere, I'm willing to go to the mat that the evidence for its benefit is pretty marginal, while its contribution to cost and coincidentally income for cardiologists is substantial. So these are a lot of his characteristics. I was on the receiving end of his persistence because when I quit my job as his research director of the group to join my friend Nasib, right there, to start a medical device company, he wouldn't hear of it, and he really talked to me over and over and thought he could persuade me. Later, when I wanted to resume cardiology practice and decided to move to Cape Cod, he told me I should be joining him instead. And over the next 15 years, quite regularly, when one of his patients on the Cape got tired of the long drive to Brookline, he'd tell them that I was the one to see on Cape Cod. And when they'd arrive in my office, the first thing they'd say is, "Dr. Lown told me that you're the one to see, but he said, when are you going to stop wasting your life and move back to Brookline with me?" I swear, I heard that 5 times from 5 different patients. This guy wouldn't quit. And he used to tell me that, and this was really kind of mind-blowing as I realized it, he used to tell me that persistence is the real secret of success. Remember, Vikas, the drip, drip, drip of water dissolves stone. So for those of you who don't know us at the Lown Institute, we're dedicated to his vision of socially responsible health care, care that's effective, affordable, and just. Our current work focuses on hospital social responsibility. Our annual hospital index, which many of you may know about, reports clinical outcomes as well as metrics like no other, value of care, as well as equity in multiple dimensions. It's now in its 6th year, and we'll be releasing another one in a couple weeks. We really strive to be technically expert, but we also try to tell it like it is. That's kind of who we are, and we think that's who Dr. Lown was. Last week, we completed a 2-year project on medical debt. We held a conference. We issued a working paper that's in collaboration with 20 scholars, 30 organizations. We've been working on, and we're continuing to work on, calculating nonprofit hospitals' tax exemptions, almost to the penny. We're going to go to 50 states. And as has been the case for many years now, we are briefing policymakers, interestingly, on both sides of the aisle, perhaps for different reasons. So I think, in general, Bernard would be very pleased. So happy birthday to Bernard Lown. So now let's hear from Zachary Lown, Bernard's grandson.
Okay. Thank you, Vikas. So I'm always thinking about my grandfather around this time of year, and he had many great quotes. And one thing that he always emphasized in regard to social and political organizing was never walk alone. I once asked him how he withstood anti-communist attacks and propaganda during the height of his work with Soviet doctors. And he replied that it was never just me. We always spoke on behalf of a larger critical mass, and crucially, as physicians, we also carried a moral authority. Another thing that he often liked to say was, with one person, you're nothing. With 2 people, you're moving. With 3 people, you have an army. When discussing my own goals and my own career path as a journalist and then later as a lawyer, he told me the following. He said, "We all enter the matrix at different points, and we all contribute in a different way to the struggle." So this year's recipient, Dr. Ramachandran, joins an inspiring group of doctors who have run the gamut. Previous winners, for those who missed our prior dinners, include Dr. Mona Atish, a pediatrician who blew the whistle on Flint's lead water crisis, withstood ridicule and government pressure, and forced the governor to admit that its children were being poisoned. It includes Dr. Altaf Sadi, whose family fled the Saddam Hussein regime, eventually came to, I believe it was Canada and then the US, where she ultimately helped to lead Mass General's asylum clinic, leading to the grant of asylum for hundreds of asylum seekers, among other things. And it includes Dr. Lily Cervantes, who is here with some of her mentees, who I've got to meet. And she built a cadre of healthcare workers to educate and campaign and ultimately win health coverage for our undocumented neighbors who needed life-saving dialysis, among other projects. And I think she's now plotting a revolution, from what I'm told. Dr. Ramachandran rightly fits within this group. Her work in the legislative field has helped ensure better FDA regulatory policy, worked to hold the all-powerful pharmaceutical manufacturers in check, and she continues to work to develop and mentor future social justice advocates. It goes without saying that at this time, we need this kind of work and people like Reshma more than ever. As Frederick Douglass put it, "The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the resistance of those whom they oppress." So we are grateful to Dr. Ramachandran, and during these times we are also very glad to have someone of her caliber on our side. Thank you.
I'm looking to how we're doing with the first course. Does everybody have something, I hope? Are we on time? Good. By the way, Joe, Altaf went to Yale too, right? Absolutely. So now this is a twofer. If you do it next year, then it's a hat trick. And we'll have to have a special celebration. Okay. Thank you, Zach. Like I said, I'm sorry I was late to this reception. I was attending my younger kid's high school graduation just down the street. So it's a day of ceremonies for me. My kid Austin is going to go to college in New Zealand, and while they have a good healthcare system, we have to buy insurance in order to get access and use it, and that's on the commercial market where pre-existing conditions are a thing, and we're not sure if medications will be covered or it might be out of pocket for us. And we have no clue what the price of that medicine will be if it's out of pocket. Now, you'd think New Zealand will have decent prices. On the other hand, there's something odd about them. They're the only other country that allows direct-to-consumer marketing, which is weird. I think the kind of social democracy, must have had an epileptic fit for that moment. I don't know what happened. In any case, taking up from where Zach left off, I want to take a moment to tell you what Dr. Lown would say about tonight, and I speak with a little authority, having worked with him for a while. He'd want to talk about the state of the world. He'd want to talk about the historical moment we're in. He'd want to see what the urgency was and how you felt it, and then he'd want to make clear the absolute necessity of taking action. I know that's what he would be talking about today. So in case he's with us tonight, let me placate him by offering a few thoughts about some of those things. You know, in recent months, you know, public life in this country has, of course, been dominated by the actions of the Trump administration in practically every arena where the government has reach. And we're discovering that the government has reach in a lot of places. The other day, Robert Kennedy's Department of Health and Human Services released a 73-page report on making America healthy again. You may have heard that it contains some made-up references from AI chatbots. You may not have heard that it contained as well a statement that if U.S. rates of obesity and diabetes matched European rates, we could save trillions of dollars. That, I can assure you, is not fake news. I happen to have read that paper about 10 years ago. It was rigorous in its methods, and the conclusions are broadly valid in my view. So to me, this illustrates something about the report, more broadly about this Make America Healthy Again movement and everything else in between, which is, it's a decidedly mixed bag. A lot of noise, plenty of partisan warfare, not much illumination. Often the right questions, too often the wrong answers. But I'm interested in the slightly bigger problem here, which is not just the reliability of AI, but the broader reliability of human knowledge. The thing that's allowed us to flourish and, for better or worse, become the dominant species on the planet. So in this historical moment, I often find myself frequently, too frequently maybe, thinking about Isaac Asimov's science fiction novel series, Foundation. The premise is that a galactic empire is in decay and decline, with one particular mathematician, a scientist of history, who realized he can make the Dark Ages much shorter by pulling people together and putting organizations in strategic places to help a new order be born. To me, and I think to many people, on the left and on the right, it feels like a lot of things are falling apart, to quote Yeats. That social entropy is increasing, and that business as usual is simply not going to cut it. And yes, there's plenty of posturing and pandering and pontificating, not a lot of workable solutions, not even a concept of a plan. The challenges we face require a lot from us. What we need to do is build a common platform of knowledge, but more importantly, we need to resurrect a moral commons if we're going to survive as a civilization. This requires serious leaders for serious times, not bureaucratic administrators or tech overlords, but people committed to the truth, working to generate it, working to spread it, to defend it, to preserve it. We need leaders who stand firm and pay attention to the man behind the curtain and make sure everybody else knows what the hell he's up to. This is the kind of leadership that we're going to need if we're going to reconstruct civilization that's worthy of our highest aspirations. These are very expansive, maybe grandiose words. But remember, this is about Bernard Lown, and he understood these truths. He had one of the most expansive visions of anyone I've met, and he knew this was the case, whether addressing nuclear weapons or later in life, climate change. Of course, what that means for tonight is that Dr. Reshma Ramachandran represents this type of principled leadership, someone willing to stand up and make sure people see what's really at stake. So Reshma, I wonder if you could just come and join me on the podium just for a couple minutes. I promise it'll be brief. So Reshma Ramachandran was born in Kerala, India, and came to the US at age 2 with her parents, both scientists. She landed in Columbus, Ohio, where her father did a postdoc in agricultural science at Ohio State, and her mother did microbiology. By grade school, she probably was already a science nerd. She would go into work with her parents and watch the happenings in their labs, maybe help out, take in the atmosphere, and probably, I'm going to guess, started dreaming up experiments of her own. In high school, she won the top prize for health and medicine in the Intel science competition. Her work was on the immunostimulating properties of an Ayurvedic herbal medication. And that's not all that fringe if you know that the first viable Western hypertensive, reserpine, derived from an Indian herbal. By the time she went to Brown for a combined undergrad and med school program, she was a fully fledged biophysics and math nerd. She was, I say that because these days I'm told that is a real compliment. She was working on nanofluidics to build breakthrough lab-on-a-chip technology. She was not a fake wunderkind like Stanford's Elizabeth Holmes, who founded Theranos and perpetrated million-dollar frauds. No. She was the real deal. So, of course, she got a grant from NASA for biological physics and got to work. Learning this, I found myself wondering if she might have planned to go into pharma or even to start a company. Maybe someday you can tell us what you thought back then. But I'm sure today the pharma lobby wishes she had. But as they say, no plan, if she had it, survives first contact with the enemy. And in South Africa, she saw the enemy. She went there to work on HIV/AIDS, and the enemy she confronted was the uselessness of beautiful, miraculous medicines if nobody can afford them. The enemy was systems of care that amplified costs and reduced access. She saw how powerful incentives slant research and tilt the table, and steadily, with each passing year, as she began to fill in the details, she saw the big picture. As a student and resident, she stepped into the lion's den and pushed university technology transfer departments for fairer pricing. And those of you who know about them know that she was confronting people whose job it was to extract extra revenue by harnessing innovations underwritten by taxpayers. As a young trainee, she and her colleagues faced off against patent lawyers, venture capitalists, senior scientists, and university middle management, all of whom, I suspect, were quite condescending to these young, obviously naive students who clearly didn't know how the world works and who were asking for ridiculous, impossible things like fairer terms of trade or lower drug prices. Her team was very tactical. They used negative media coverage as leverage, organized patients and other stakeholders, and then went to the top of the organization to negotiate deals. And they won major concessions. Even a brief glance at her resume shows that she became as systematic about advocacy as she had been about nanomedicine. She's authored 35 peer-reviewed papers. She's been an invited speaker to over 30 lectures. She served on a Lancet commission. She is an editor of PLOS General Public Health and a junior faculty person at Yale. Importantly, she co-founded with Dr. Joseph Ross the Yale Collaboration for Regulatory Rigor, Integrity, and Transparency, which has become a critical node in national networks working to change health in this country and improve health policy. Oh, and she's written 25 op-eds for the Washington Post, Stat News, The Hill, The Nation, Boston Review, and she's testified in front of government committees, worked with legislators on reform. I saw a picture of her with Bernie Sanders. So what did I say? She's the real deal. So in closing, I just want to say we chose Reshma for this award for all the things I've just mentioned. But for me, the tell was the instant when I spoke to her. Because after just a few minutes, you see that this is a person with a restless, dare I say relentless intelligence. There's no question whatsoever that if she takes something on, she's going to stick the landing. So I know Dr. Lown would be proud to have her linked to his name. I think he'd agree that in this historical moment, we need leaders like her. Even though many people feel a sense of growing disarray and decay in public life, we can get to the other side. But to do it, we need truth tellers, risk takers, and rigorous thinkers all rolled into one. Look, we all have special talents as individuals, but we also struggle with our weaknesses. One of these, unrestrained self-interest, or to be more blunt, greed, is something that creates a destructive dynamic that leads to the tragedy of the commons. If everyone fights to catch the last fish in the ocean, we're all going to starve. But the genius of our species as individuals also, even though we struggle with those weaknesses, the genius of our species is that we've survived because of our capacity to weave a social fabric at massive scale, to create an open public space with a kind of a force field of common values that transcend any one of us. So compared to all other living creatures, this capacity to me is almost magical. It's what inspires us to embrace the highest aspirations, to encode those into the highest standards, and to then set those as the norms that we hold ourselves, each other, our leaders to account. So we must short-circuit the Dark Ages and trigger a new renaissance of civic culture. And to do that, we need leaders who can show us how to rejuvenate the moral commons into a public garden for our children and grandchildren, one that they can step into like when they graduate from high school, one that they can step into when they're ready to go into the world, and where we know they can flourish. So it's my great pleasure to present the Bernard Lown Award to Reshma Ramachandran.